Sorry, I just did a whole bunch of talking. Had the mute button on. We're gonna start over. All right, so my name is MSgt Julius King. I'm the Joint Base Andrew Career Assistance Advisor, and I am hosting with Master Sergeant Melisa Witter, who is the Joint Base Anacostia Bolling / Pentagon Career Assistance Advisor. We'll be introducing our chiefs here shortly, but if this is your first time with us, we would like to say welcome. If you're returning, welcome again. For this forum, it's set up to kind of be a smaller scale discussion about whatever it is that you want to discuss. There's no particular topic, and there is really nothing that's off limits. You ask real questions, you get real answers, and that's just the way we do these. If you have any questions, we will open the floor up for that. So if you have a question, please feel free to ask that question. If you don't feel comfortable asking the question, then you can send a private message to me or Sergeant Witter, and we will ask the question for you. You are welcome to join in and with your camera so we can see your face, but we do understand that some people might still be laying in bed or things like that. So don't feel obligated, but you are welcome to do so. So without further ado, Chiefs, we'll go ahead and have you introduce yourselves and go from there.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Chief Master Sergeant Edwin Rice. I'm the Air Force Career Field Manager for the Manpower Organization and Resources stationed at the Pentagon. Definitely happy to be here talking amongst you all this morning, or talking with you all this morning, and I definitely look forward to the dialogue, hearing the questions, your thoughts, concerns, and things of that nature. I'm a firm believer that we definitely all can be able to learn from each other. I've been in the Air Force coming up on 27 years. Been stationed at 11 different assignments, including here in the Pentagon. Prior to me being in Manpower, I spent 13 years in security forces, doing various backgrounds within that career field before I retrained in Manpower back in 2004. And since then, I've still been traveling around the Air Force, and now, the Lord has blessed me to be an opportunity to be able to serve as a career field manager. So again, like I said, I look forward to the dialogue this morning with each of you, and look forward to your questions and your thoughts.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Chief Master Sergeant TAMALA HARTZ. I'm the Career Field Manager for Security Forces. I've been in the Air Force about 29 years. I've had about 14 assignments. I've done various things across the enterprise, but primarily just being a defender the majority of the time there. Currently I'm in the Pentagon. Prior to that, I was in AFCENT forward, and then prior to that, I was at the schoolhouse. So those are kind of really the last 3 assignments. I look forward to today. Hopefully, we get some hard questions, some good mentorship going, some good exchange of ideas back and forth. And so I look forward to the next hour. Over.
All right. Thank you guys both very much. So before we get started with our opening question, do we have any questions from the audience? Nope. All right. So I'll just go ahead and open it up for you guys. We'll keep it pretty simple. What is, as we start moving back into what we would like to call normal operations, I guess we're getting back in the building a little bit more. And we've talked about it before, like what will we keep? What will we not continue to do from lessons we learned during COVID? So I guess I can ask the biggest thing, especially as we come up on a new fiscal year and numbers, a big thing that we have is retraining. So can you tell us what is new for each of your career fields and where are you guys going moving forward with your operations?
I could tackle this one first. With regards to, especially as we some people would like to say the new normal, I would prefer to say really, just adjusting with the times. For us, especially when we go regards to down to the schoolhouse and everything, what we'll obviously take a look at, especially with these times, is be able to take a look a lot, virtual learning, distance learning. What we've also starting to do is start in our very early test phase of being able to what we call flip the classroom. So in other words, it's instead of the instructors actually doing a lot of the teaching, flip the classroom. In other words, the students be able to do a lot of facilitating with, obviously with instructors, kind of guiding the discussions. Very similar to almost kind of what you see in the NCOA, senior NCO, chief leadership course, things of that nature. So what we're trying to do is be able to follow the guidelines that's going to be set forth by the 2nd Air Force and ATC with regards to kind of virtualizing our classrooms a little bit more, which would be able to help to get the airmen to the tactical commander at those levels, so we can be able to, get the commanders and all the senior leaders the human capital that they need to project air power. So that's some of the things that I know that we're going through. I know in our career field, with special regard to COVID-19. And like I said, just taking a look at those opportunities to be able to take advantage of the virtual opportunities that has afforded us to be able to, again, get airmen, to tactical commanders and the war fighters more expeditiously, and also to be able to ensure that we, get an airman the right training, more quicker, more efficient, and with more agility and flexibility. So that's what the things that's going on in my career field at this time. Over.
So some of the things that we're experiencing, and is a lot of our put on hold. So right now we're working with 2nd Air Force to try to bring those courses back online. We're still doing our basic course for our apprentice course students coming in, so we can keep making our airmen. And our 7 level course and those things are offline, and that's causing a little bit of a delay, and that'll clog up the pipe if we keep doing that for too long. For retrains, we're continuing to retrain into security from security forces into dog handler and combat arms. We're also continuing to release from the career field our first term airmen. We've kind of talked on last time. I always talk about that whenever I get an opportunity. There used to be a myth that once you went into security forces, you could never retrain out. And I always, my tagline there is always, every first term airman in their retrain window, I automatically approve for a retrain. So if they're qualified for another career field, another career field will take them, then we allow them to go in and to do that. As far as our NCO Corps 2nd term career airmen, Outside of the NCORP, we generally don't approve retrains, but that enables us to effectively manage the career field and make sure that we have the capability within the career field that we need. So other than that, I mean, other than any specific questions, that would be all that I would share.
Thank you both so much for those updates. And I really like what you said, Chief Rice, about not saying the new norm, but what did you call it? Instead of saying the new normal, what we should call it, changing with the times. I can't hear you.
Mute on.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I'm adjusting with the times. You know, that's really what it is. Like I said, I mean, I know, you know, people get, you know, hung up with the title, but the truth of the matter is, even though it is unfortunate as it was, this is something that, you know, I think I spoke with on the last time, you know, I was, you know, with this great event, is, you know, our ability to be able to, you know, be flexible with the times that we're in. And, you know, the airmen has just really just been incredible and everything. And kind of piggyback a little bit off of what my earlier comment in regards to your question, you know, our schoolhouse never closed down. We still accepted, you know, retrainees, because the Manpower career field is one of the few career fields in the Air Force that actually is you retrain into, and not in what we call in the session pipeline, meaning going straight from basic training to tech school. We don't have that capability. So I never shut down the opportunity for students to attend the schoolhouse and everything, even with the quarantine measures in place. And we were still able to graduate a multitude of students on time and being able to get, you know, those airmen, you know, to their commanders. But also, again, at the same time, that's what we did, was take a look at our, you know, our virtual capability to be able to better address how we'd be able to, you know, train the students, you know, obviously futuristically, but yet taking the time in the present to address that. So that's, like I said, that's some of the things, again, we're going, especially with our career field. So again, it's not necessarily new normal. It's just an adjustment with the time. Over.
Thank you so much. Like I mentioned, I really appreciate that, because, and as you both mentioned, the training piece, for me as an airman, I was so impressed. We still figured out how to keep our airmen trained in basic training, right? Because we knew, you know, just like Manpower, but we had to keep that going. So when times call for it, we definitely demonstrate, you know, our innovativeness and flexibility. With adjusting with the times, so there are so many things going on right now, right? And with all of the following George Floyd's death and the civil rights movement we're seeing again, and, you know, just quick, you know, comma, but we're not seeing it again. So it's been ongoing, right? Like there wasn't a pause. This has been ongoing. If both of you wouldn't mind sharing, as career field managers, how are you guiding like your leaders to address what's going on with your airmen?
Yeah, like I said, that's a good question. Like I said, when all this, you know, unfortunate events broke, and to be honest with you, you know, as I'd like to say, keep it 100. I mean, this is, I would say this latest event is what is the straw that broke the camel's back, because this is something that really has been ongoing really for quite some time. You know, the thing is, what we call is this right here has just been a perfect storm times two. You know, when you come in, you know, when you're trying to get through a pandemic, and then obviously, you know, through this through the other issues that obviously we've been dealing with. Like I said, it's just it makes for a challenging time. So for what we've done, especially in our career field, is to start encouraging, you know, the conversations, you know, to, you know, first and foremost, to let everyone know, you know, in a career field, especially from a leadership perspective, that, you know, we understand, you know, that these are challenging times that we're going through. And the fact that we understand that if there's a feeling of outrage, if there's a feeling of sadness, if there's a feeling of whatever the gamut of feelings one may feel them. We're human. And what we wanted to do is be able to, you know, again, get through those feelings of emotions, much like what Chief Wright had put out, you know, when he's with his op-ed, you know, who am I? And after that, okay, that's great, but now what do we do? So that, we started off, especially, with the tough conversations, and as I said, to them, I said, we need to do a heart check, a heart condition check. That means check within yourselves internally. What are some of the things that you can do to be able to, better mankind, better what's around you and everything. So for us, from a leadership standpoint, we've, really started to address that. Hey, we've got your back. We understand what's going on. We understand that, we're here for you as senior leaders, and to be able to, continue to, come together as one, because we firmly believe, as I'm sure the Air Force obviously believes, one team, one fight, one family. And no matter what, we're going to be family. We're going to be brothers and sisters, in this cause. And, and to continue to do what's right, continue to stay strong, continue to stay focused on what's doing right, and continue to check on, your fellow brother and sister, and everything else, obviously will continue to take care of itself. And that definitely includes the mission. So those are some of the things, especially we've been tackling, obviously, from a senior leader perspective within our career field. And so far, we're coming out with some very good results. Over.
So that's a great question. And, from a twofold perspective, right? As airmen first, but also, we have 38,000 total force defenders right now who are out there. And we talk from a senior leader perspective about having dignity and respect for each other, having dignity and respect for the people that we serve with and protect, and why we're here, and reminding folks that it's about protecting each other and taking care of each other. We've done a lot in our training to talk about that and having that real talk. And I think sometimes in my career, we shied away from having those conversations. And because we shied away from having those conversations, I don't necessarily think that we hit them face on and head on. And so now we've changed how we address that. And our commanders, and we've encouraged our commanders and our chiefs and our senior leaders in the organizations to have these conversations with our airmen, because our airmen are going to feel it from two different directions. Number one is humans, right? But also as defenders. And we want to make sure that that they understand how the actions of one terrible person, an incident could take, and how that gets shared across the entire enterprise. And we've had a lot of success with that. We've got a lot of feedback from the crew fold, from the defenders, that they feel like that they're able to talk through some of their feelings, how they feel about each other. And then, and then that's the second part of it, is addressing it from an airman perspective. We all put on a uniform and all our name tapes say U.S. Air Force, and that's the family we're in. And so we want to make sure that our airmen feel that if they don't feel that they're being respected and treated with dignity, that they can come forward, and we are absolutely going to do whatever it takes to make them feel accepted, loved, and cared about.
Thank you both so much for your transparency and really your leadership during these difficult times. And Chief HARTZ, while you were talking, I remembered, I know, but that you are, over security forces. And one of the challenges, one of the biggest things, is the polarized effect in the civilian community, is that if you say one thing about police officers, you can't be both things. Last week, we did a resiliency special delivery, and someone brought up within the culture how challenging it was because of these topics. And I really like what you said as far as not taking it head on, because I think as a total force, we weren't. And I think that for me, I think it was twofold, right? So one, we like to check boxes. So it's just like, well, look, I'm a woman, you're a woman, Chief, right? Like we all work, we lead together, we work together, and we have this enlisted force structure. So everything's even Steven, like here we are. And it's a really difficult thing. I have several defender friends. I have civilian police officer friends. And even last week, my family and I attended a protest, and my son thoughtfully said, "Oh, good, the feds are here." no, that's not how, first of all, they're not federal agents, you know, but kind of have this discussion because he's a 15-year-old consuming the media, right? And so there's a lot of things that he's misunderstanding. But I'm just wondering, how is that being addressed in security forces to say, like, these are really tough times to lead in? Because like you mentioned, we all wear Air Force over our heart. But for example, a lot of us aren't allowed to travel in uniform right now because here in the NCR, where we're so highly military, you know, big military presence, we're having these incidents from civilians who are now like catcalling us. And, you know, in a couple of occasions, there's been even some physical interactions with civilians and, you know, uniform members. So I know it's a difficult discussion. I appreciate every culture that we have. Chief Rice, I couldn't be Manpower. Your math is really difficult. So that there was that. So when I retrained, it was off the table for me. But we have a lot of subcultures. But right now, to me, I would think that being a defender would be really difficult, right? Because we're asking, I mean, it's always a tough job. But right now, I think that there's additional challenges. So if you have anything to share about that.
So you're right, it is, right? And so not only are they on the front lines still in the pandemic and the COVID and being exposed on a regular basis to all of the things and all of the challenges that are happening there, as well as, you know, their families and worrying about, am I going to be exposed and take it home, and a lot like all the first responders are experiencing. And then you know, then you take and I don't want to use the word hatred, but I think the frustration of what the same people that we're trying to protect and defend to feel toward them, that they're not appreciated, or even that they are somehow, the actions of somebody else is a reflection on them, is hard to take, especially when we're talking about, you know, the majority of our defenders are young airmen. They're you know, I say 75% of our career field is under the age of 23. For those folks to experience this and be exposed to this is going to be growth for them. And this is really where our NCOs and our senior NCOs and our commanders and our chiefs need to be there to lead through this and address it and grab a hold of those airmen and say, you know, we're here for you when you need help, or you're frustrated, or you need to talk about how you feel. We're here to do that. And that's what the mission today is about. So yeah, I think our airmen are out there, the defenders out there, their rucks are a little full right now. And I feel like, but I do feel like our leadership hopefully is engaging with them appropriately and helping them guide through this.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Real quick, because Sergeant Weir just mentioned it, and I don't know if everybody actually knows, so I apologize in advance. But Sergeant Rice, can you explain what Manpower does? Because and it's twofold. Because a lot of people are like, "Man, I want to cross train into Manpower," but what is that? Do they just help us get manning for the Air Force? And I'm like, I think it's a little bit different than that. I know you guys run CPI and stuff like that, but can you kind of tell us what it is that Manpower does?
Sure, sure for this audience, and I'm glad I kind of got to mention, because I was going to mention that towards the end of this broadcast, but I'm glad you kind of give me a chance to kind of address the question now, so I can always accept more recruits, especially for 21 and going forward. But what Manpower organization and resources do, we have 4 core competencies that that encompass our career field. That obviously lays the foundation for organizational structure. In other words, how we design our units, requirements determination. In other words, determining the amount of obviously requirements that actually aligns with the number of personnel that it takes to perform a specific function. We do program allocation control, which is basically the funding of those positions, which actually gets the blue suiters or civilians or the proper workforce to be able to perform that function. And then, of course, you mentioned, performance management when we were talking about, CPI, different process improvements, enterprise change management, things of that nature. So to sum it all up, we are, obviously our management consultants. We help advise, senior leaders, whether, commanders, senior listed leaders, so on and so forth, on how to best execute their human capital portfolio. So it's not always talking about being able to, cutting manpower. I would not say that. I would say redistributing manpower to where it's really needed. So, for example, you may have one career field. They may not need too many personnel or too many of this particular specialty, but another specialty may need it. Like case in point, defenders. Defenders may need additional more. So we would reallocate from maybe potentially from one career field to be able to help another, especially performing within the Air Force, within the Department of Defense budget. That's what we do as Manpower. We are two things only: advisors, executors. We advise the senior leaders on how to best manage their human capital portfolio, and then we execute what those senior leader decisions are, wherever it comes from, a program objective memorandums all the way down to the tactical level requirements, determinations that you would see actually the blue suits or the workforce personnel that you see in your units. So again, we don't take manpower. We don't have the authority to do that. So I just want to get that out the way. We don't have the authority to do that, but we advise senior leaders on how to best utilize their human capital portfolio. And just for the record, also, it doesn't necessarily also equate, especially with math. I mean, yes, our career field definitely prefers, obviously, you have a, good, strong foundation in math. But again, when we're talking about, especially, changing, especially with today's times, especially going forward, there's a lot of different things that can be able to help you do math a lot more expediently, a lot more efficiently and effectively. So one of the things we're doing special with when we are attracting the right recruits is, bottom line, you have to, first of all, have the right mindset to be able to have the overall strategic perspective from the tactical level all the way to strategic perspective on how to be able to best advise commanders on how to utilize their human capital portfolio. And it doesn't matter what AFSC background you came from, because again, I was a former defender, and I was able to take my experiences as a defender and being able to apply it in manpower, and was obviously able to do fairly decent. And it's about your drive. And like I said, we want to attract people that really has the drive to really want to be able to help the United States Air Force throughout, to be able to say, hey, this is what you need to be able to perform to the maximum extent possible on how we get after the Air Force mission. So that's what I would say. That's what we as Manpower do, and the people that's been coming into our career field, has found that to be true, and really excited and kind of get out there and be able to help tell our story. So if you have anybody out there that actually wants to join our great career field, definitely please send them to the local Manpower office, and everything would be able to help them start the process. Now, fortunately for me, I guess unfortunately you could say for this year, we've already, exhausted all our quotas. So that tells you a lot of people wanted to join our career field. But I could do something about fiscal year 21 and going forward. So if you got some, bring them our way. Over.
Thank you very much for that. And I see the recruiting pitch. I appreciate it. So as I segue into this next question, and it's for both of you guys, especially since I see we have a couple of defenders on the call. So here's the question. What would you say to those, especially our defenders, who say that, one, we may be cutting too many numbers and it is making it harder, especially I hear it a lot from the security forces realm, that it is getting harder to do the job with the numbers that we have, and mixed with deployments. I don't know if you want to start with Chief HARTZ, and then that's across the board also, but I know defenders is the biggest one, but yeah.
Yeah, so, I will be honest with you, and this is real talk. I have the numbers to show. we are over 100% manned, and we've been over 100% manned for the last couple years, right? And if you go back to 2016 and 2017, we weren't. We were in the 80s. We were like 82% manned after the cuts in 2014 and 2015, right? So we were really not. But it's almost, and I'm not saying that there isn't some value in it, it's almost like a learned behavior now, right? Like we always just think we need manpower, manpower, manpower. Now, what we usually find is it's how we're utilizing the manpower we have and what we're doing, the things that we have. So at the airman level, they always just hear us talking about, oh, I have to make postings. So we talk about manpower when we're talking about posting, and we're talking about those kind of things. But we have been doing everything possibly that we can do to get our manpower healthy. You know, and I work with Chief Rice on a regular basis. We talk about manpower. We validate our manpower. Now, do we have a shortage? Yes. But the Air Force has a shortage. When we go in the door, we're 40,000 people short across the enterprise from all AFSCs, not just security forces. So we've been fortunate enough in the last couple of years to actually get more manpower and get funding to help some of the manpower that we're at. So part of that is let's look how what we're using, what we do with what we use. And that's where we've really taken some steps to try to go back out and look like, okay, hey, just because we did this in 1980 or 1990 doesn't mean that we should be doing it in 2020, because it doesn't work. So we've reorganized some of our squadrons. We found a lot of successes with that. What we found is there's flexibility for the airmen. There's flexibility for the leadership. They can help airmen go to school. They take into consideration the future development of our airmen. It puts a good developmental path together for them, and it builds out what they're wanting, what we're trying to do. You know, and we're going to get with the manpower folks, and in probably the next year, we're going to go through a complete overhaul of all security forces across the enterprise to get after exactly what you're talking about. Because what we don't want our airmen to feel like is that, you know, they're undermanned, and because they're undermanned, they become overworked.
Yeah, and this is Chief Rice. Kind of piggyback more from where Chief HARTZ is coming from. You know, let me offer this perspective, especially from the manpower lens, and more, should I say, really from the Air Force strategic lens. Is obviously there's an approved budget that comes down. Obviously, that's allocated. Obviously, you know, from Congress to the Department of Defense, and they have to execute those dollars in their respective branches. Now, in a perfect world, we could be able to have the right amount of, you know, fiscal dollars to be able to fund all the different level programs that we have, and to be able to execute, you know, the mission of air power. That would be a perfect world, but we don't have that. In other words, the fiscal dollars that has been allocated would never really quite match the requirements that we had that it takes. So our senior leaders are charged with prioritizing what requirements need to be funded in order to be able to maximize our human capital. And sometimes, you know, some tough decisions have to be made. And therefore, for the rest of it, you take with the efficiencies of being able to utilize the human capital. And that resides from every leader, even down to every individual, is to be able, how best can I be utilized to be able to perform the function? Because we know that the fiscal dollars will never match the requirements. It just won't. But again, within there, again, lies the opportunities for innovation, for education and training, to being able to not only adjust, but also adapt to today's times. And again, it kind of goes back again to what, especially what we do as manpower, is to be able to advise that commander from what we see from a tactical to a strategic perspective on how to best utilize the capital, while we look to allocate, you know, to be able to identify the risk associated of not having enough human capital resources to be able to get after the mission. And obviously take a look at, you know, work center priorities and responsibilities, some of the things that you could do, some of the things that, hey, should you really be doing this? Do you really need to be doing this? And that's kind of one thing, especially kind of going back to COVID, has kind of helped us address. So these are some of the things, you know, that, you know, from a tactical all the way to a strategic level, is some of the reasons why when you heard Chief HARTZ say, you know, when they were 100% man, especially now, but yet still have some, you know, little creative gaps, somewhere in their portfolio. And the truth of the matter is all career fields have that. And with ourselves in manpower, no different. even though I'm slightly, close to 100%, I still have gaps in my portfolio, and I have to address, strategically which ones that obviously is going to get after, our strategic vision, while we look at, creative opportunities to mitigate the risk in other areas where I have gaps. So that's kind of the address don't answer. So for airmen is to be able to take a look at is, hey, address what you can address, and then be able to suggest innovative ways up through your respective chain, and then be able to, again, get our manpower office involved. And actually, our manpower office should be really be coming to your location, obviously, once we get out of COVID and everything, and be able to say, hey, I'm Sergeant such and such. How you doing today? I come to see what you guys do here in your respective units. How, as a manpower person, how best can I be able to serve you and be able to advocate on how you could be able to best utilize your capability in respective units. That's how we be able to help be able to reduce and mitigate risk. That's the first step. Second step obviously would be going towards obviously making sure that respectively, but also intelligently, have your senior leader buy-in to make sure that it makes sense. Because again, you got to remember, your senior leaders always, probably operate with more information and everything. They have the totality of the picture. So again, especially with regards to where Chief HARTZ and I sit at, especially up at Air Staff as being career field managers, we see the overarching view, and our responsibility is to make sure that we keep our career fields healthy, not just for today, but also looking 5 and 10 years from now. So those are some of the things that, we take a look at, and how we be able to address, those things that be able to, alleviate, some of the stress and the strain that our airmen, military, civilian contractors, and otherwise may be able to feel, especially at the respective levels below the strategic level. So that's kind of things that, we want to take a look at, and also to be able to continuously address, to make sure at the end of the day, the airmen and the tactical level people have what they need to be able to execute the mission.
Yeah, I want to follow up on something too really quick, because I want to make sure that if there are defenders that watch this later or are listening now, understand that our number one priority every time we go to the corporate process is the number one priority is manpower. We are always asking for funding for manpower. We're always asking for that ability to support and to gain more manpower. And so, General Collins's strategic plan, if you look at that, you'll see immediately that manpower is our number one ask every time we go to the corporate process.
Thank you both for that, especially kind of explaining the process in detail, just for all career fields. And Chief HARTZ, thank you for kind of hitting that from the defender aspect, because we do have a lot of defenders, especially in this area, doing a lot of jobs, and sometimes people don't realize that it is a process. I have used Manpower for my office, and they actually helped me get more bodies. So it does work at both ways. So with that, I will turn it over if we have anybody that has any questions for Chief Rice or for Chief HARTZ, and if not, I'll let Sergeant Witter chime in. Please go ahead, Sergeant Griffin.
Yes, good morning. So I'm also a fellow defender. Good morning, Chief HARTZ. This question kind of goes along with the getting over the hump part. Obviously, we have a large force, and like you said, manpower is always a huge issue. And not everyone is able to retrain. So how do we, as NCOs and senior NCOs, deliberately develop our junior enlisted forces when we have such a large and competitive career field, and not everyone is able to retrain? It's, because talent management is always a struggle, when there aren't enough jobs, there aren't enough opportunities for everyone to be able to partake. I know for a fact that a lot of the issues that a lot of the junior enlisted have is that they don't get the opportunities to do certain things within the career field because there's not enough jobs. So how do we deliberately develop them to have that buy-in to stay in and still do their job and want to stay in while feeling like they're progressing at the same time?
So that's a great question, and that's the question, that even when I was a young NCO, we were asking and we were talking about. And the opportunity to develop airmen starts, even on an operational flight, by having them do different duty positions, experiencing different jobs within a flight operation. And then again, on our staffs, right? They do have opportunities to go out and do special duties. That's another thing we can highly recommend. There's the DSD process once they get, to that certain, once they get to be a staff sergeant. Those are some of the things that they can go look at. And we do release a steady flow. Matter of fact, we're like one of the largest contributors to DSD and those type of things. But even within our own career field, right, there's a lot of opportunities to do, multiple different things. Raven, instruct, go out, do different positions like, ESS. There's just so many different, like I call them the niches of the career field that depending on what they're interested in doing, we just have to find a way to do it. And one of the other things that I found is successful is when you build second and third, like additional, I don't want to call it additional duties on your flight, right? So when you start involving the airmen in how you grow your flight, making them trainers, making them responsible for something so that when they come to work, they're not just like, oh, I'm posted out on the flight line or I'm posted at the EC, but, oh, I'm responsible for tracking this or I'm responsible for doing this. And when they come to work and they feel like they have some responsibility and that they pay it back and that they give something more, you can create those little environments just within your operational flight or within your chain of command with your airmen. And that's really how you start to grow them into being future NCOs and teaching them how to manage multiple tasks and do stuff like that. And so I think that, there's opportunities out there. It's hard to do though, and you have to kind of hunt for it. I do agree with you there, and especially with our airmen, right? I always talk about, 70% of our career field are first-term airmen. So really, when you think about 30% of the career field is our career airmen, and those are the folks that are generally staff sergeant, tech sergeants, and above. So the opportunity for us to mature them and grow them is greater. The other thing I always say, PCS, because every time you go somewhere new, you're going to experience a new job, you're going to experience a new mission, you're going to experience new people, and nothing grows you faster than doing that. Plus, when you get somewhere new and you start over again, it tends to take away the monotony and the day-to-day grind. I hope that answered your question. Great question, and thanks for being on, and thanks for leading our defenders.
Cool.
Thanks so much, Sergeant Griffin, for that question. Anyone else want to chime in or anything on your mind? No worries. So Chief Wrights and Chief Hartz, we talk about this also every week, but related to adjusting with the times. What do you think as we return back to more normal operations, whether that be a couple months or 6 months out, what big changes do you personally, lessons learned, and then professionally that you see may work out for your career fields?
This is Chief Rice. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. I thought I was having a little technical difficulty. I'll start off with personal first. For me, I know for me and my family, we definitely take a look at a lot of virtual things. I'll be the first to tell you that, virtually, I was virtually challenged, if you will. Obviously until I lived with my 9-year-old son, and he was able to show me obviously different things like that. These are, different things that, we could be able to do. I'm like, wow, okay, I must be really that old or that slow. But in all seriousness, just be able to, really enjoy the time that we not only have with family, but also utilize, our innovation and be able to remain connected, to people, period, and then be able to, enjoy the fellowship, that we have with them. And like I said, and we long to be able to do that once again, and, especially as we come out of this. And also being able to continue to, really listen, not only, with our ears, but definitely with our hearts, especially with people that we know that have had challenging times, especially going through COVID. So that's for on the personal side. On a professional side, I know we really, made tremendous strides, especially in our career field. We had what we call a worldwide, Manpower Symposium, where we've had, senior leaders from all across our great career field, and we've had, great guest speakers come and be able to talk about, the strategic vision of not only with the Air Force, but obviously, where we're going, with regards to a career field, and being able to remain connected, but not always having to have the opportunity to be able to necessarily be face to face, but and also still be able to have the ability to be highly effective even during this particular, challenging times. And like I said, that for us was awesome to see, and also to kind of remove the stigmatism of teleworking and other venues of being able to work and still be effective. Um, and also for us, and this is again, kind of pitching back to Manpower, is being able to see exactly what it is we really supposed to be doing, that needs to be doing, that not only from a policy perspective, but also get after the effectiveness and the efficiency of being able to meet the mission. So that's what I tell you is from these particular times has really kind of taught me, is to be able to get back to to the ground roots, the ground basics of, again, why we're here, why why we're serving, and then obviously the innovative ways to to really continue to get after not only our Air Force, but our nation's business. And the fact that knowing the fact that this really it might have temporarily, when I say temporarily, I mean really small, temporarily slowed us down, but really once we got our footing, it revved back up again. And that just goes to show you the not only the agility and flexibility, but the resiliency of each of us to be able to rise to the occasion and be able to meet any kind of challenge head on. So and that last part, I could be able to go professional and or personal. And like I said, it was just an awesome thing to see. And again, and as we come out of it, especially as we come out of COVID and everything, it kind of goes back to, I would say again, the adjustments that we're making is to continue to look for areas of improvement, not only within yourself, but as obviously your fellow teammates, and being able to intelligently communicate that obviously up to the senior leaders, and also at the same time being able to be receptive of what the senior leaders are stating as far as what we see from from our level downward. And like I said, this environment really has taught me professionally and personally that, hey, as long as you continue to stay the grind and continue to do what is right and continue to be innovative, continue to change, continue to adapt, continue to overcome, that there's next to nothing that you can't do and get past. So that's some of the things, again, I've learned to come out of this, and that's some of the things that I communicated on our career field. And like I said, they're continuously excited, to really continues to get after, our business and everything. And I can resonate to all career fields. And I turn it over to Chief HARTZ, and, for her perspective on what she sees on her end. Over.
So there, we've learned so much through this, right? One of the things that I've personally learned is that I desire human contact. I am a people person, right? Like sitting at the house working on that I'm not sure is the part of my job that I really enjoy or that I look forward to. So, and I think that because as humans, we desire that social interaction with other people. We're creating these kind of environments like this where we're doing it virtually, but it's not the same. So I don't feel like we can replace that face to face now. As we work through what next year looks like, or after that, we'll find different ways to continue to do this. But the other thing I was reminded of is how innovative and how creative our airmen can be, and how they just thrive. They're resilient, and they get through things, and they embrace the challenge, and they push through and make greatness happen. So I think that I've been reminded of that a lot. The other thing that I've been reminded of is that the Air Force goes on a lot without necessarily all the the bureaucracy that we have on a regular basis. And we've streamlined that process, and it's kind of made us, I think, more efficient because we're much more effective and we make quicker decisions and we're moving out on things. And it's showed that. The final thing I think that is important that we've learned from this has taught our young airmen all across the force, from all AFSCs and stuff, how embracing a challenge or multiple challenges at one time and pushing through that makes you a better defender, makes you a better airman. It makes you a better defender, and it helps grow you as a person so that you'll be more flexible, and you'll understand and you have more confidence in what you can go through and what you can strive through, and I would say even be successful through.
Thank you guys both for that. So as we're getting close to the top of the hour, want to open it back up for one last question, if anybody has one. Yes, no, maybe so.
Actually, I have one.
Okay, please.
Actually, I want to take the time to really hear from you all. I mean, and what are some of the things that as we dealt with COVID and as we dealing with the unfortunate times that that we're going through, what are some of the things that you are learning about, whether about society as a whole or learning about yourself, and what are some of the things that you feel that that you can share? Because even though I know us as chiefs, we definitely have a lot to share and definitely appreciative, but but I also could take this time to really learn from you, because I mean you all, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we all could be able to learn from each other and grow from each other. So I'd like to hear from you. What's some of the things that that you've taken out of this, the last, I would say, 6 months, positive or challenging or otherwise, and how you think we could be better from it going forward.
I'll just say this. I'll say for me, one of the things that I've learned is trying to get leaders, right? So even though as a senior NCO, there are things that I know I have to do, but I, of course, still people above me. So trying to get my leaders in the mind frame, not just the saying of let's be innovative, but actually putting yourself in the mind frame, because we say let's be innovative as leaders, but then when innovation comes, we have a hard time getting past what I like to call the old way of doing things, right? So as we talk about this new virtual world, yes, we're all for it because we have to be in a virtual world. But as we talk about continuing to do these things, I've seen a lot of leaders that are super, super stoked about let's reopen everything. Let's bring everybody back in. It's like, that's okay, right? Some stuff we have to bring everybody back in on, but not everybody or not everything, right? And it's like, well, we just need to put eyes on this and eyes on that. And then when we do that, what's going to happen, and this is what I feel what's going to happen, is once we get used to everybody being back at work, we're going to lose the thought of being innovative. Another thing that I've been trying to push is on the opposite end of that is balance. Even for myself, I understand that some things do warrant human interaction, like we do need it. So from the younger standpoint, I hear a lot of people like, we can do everything virtually now. We don't need to come in. But some things we do need to have eyes on or hands on. The biggest thing with that is, like, I look at with schooling or learning, we know that distance learning works to some degree, right? So like a while back, we did away with NCOA. Basically, we just went to like course 14, course 15. But then we were missing a large chunk of what the purpose of all this was. And we know it's about learning, but it's about networking. Like some of the best relationships, working relationships for building for the future leadership structure of our force was built in ALS. It was built in NCOA, senior NCOA, right? Like you hear a lot of these leaders like, yeah, man, I met what's the name back in ALS, and now they're both chiefs together. So I think that we need to balance what we're doing, right? So like from opposite ends, yes, we don't need to bring everybody back in, but we also don't need to do everything is distant learning. I think that we should blend it, and find a healthy balance. What don't we need to come in for? What do we need to come in for? And with that, so I think that's the biggest thing for me, and challenging my leaders to say like, hey, we don't need to really come in for whatever XYZ. But like I did a bullet writing course virtually. It was good. It was a lot of information given, but it probably would have went a whole lot better if I could have had people in a classroom throwing bullet examples up on the board, like, and then working through that together. The virtual world creates you can still do it, but it makes it a little bit harder. So I think that is a way, but Chiefs panels like these, I would want to stay virtual as much as we can, because there's people in their offices and putting it on for everybody, for the career fields, defenders, people, medical. A lot of them just can't get out the work section, but they be like, oh, I want to attend this. So if we can maybe do it where we have people in a building and then we put it virtually also, I think see the blend of that. So trying to work through that would be the biggest things that I say. Oh, over.
And I can chime in really quick also, and I'd love for other people to answer afterwards, just because, like Chief Rice said, this opportunity is not just to hear from the Chiefs, but for us to have that crosstalk and learn from each other. I really appreciate every time. I don't play tennis or volleyball or any of those games. I don't play any sports really, but whenever you see it, the ball go back and forth several times, I really appreciate when the conversation bounces, more than just back and forth. But personally, I have two 15-year-olds, and a couple years, I've been back from Korea for almost 2 years, and I realize how much they've grown up. And my daughter, how much she didn't tell me about how hard that time was for her. And it's very interesting to me that I feel like only now, and only because the noise is taken away, is she being honest about some of that. And so as a parent, and maybe as a box checker, I think that I was a little bit naive to how much that impacted her. So I've learned a lot about my kids, watching them. And then just kind of having that reflection that, man, they're 15, they're going to be 16 this fall, and in 2 years they could possibly go into a recruiter's office. That's extraordinarily scary, right? So professionally, I became career assistance advisor is my dream job. I've wanted this job since I was a senior airman. I take it very seriously, and I'm trying my best to be the best CA that I can be. But I never predicted that I would do it in this environment. So learning a brand new job in this environment, trying to get everything up to speed. And I haven't quite gotten to where Sergeant King is having additional people, but being a team of one does present challenges. So on one hand, I know everything that rests with me, but on the other hand, I know that I can't get to everything that rests with me as quickly as I'd like. So still doing that. And then lastly, but as a global citizen, before COVID, I think I took a lot of things for granted. And like Chief HARTZ mentioned, I also really appreciate personal interactions. And sometimes I would put some of those off for work or for something that wasn't as important. And having the opportunity taken away really is something that, as we get back to less social distance and other things, I'm going to make a priority of that. And I don't want to be passive. I'm excited about the changes that I'm seeing in our communities and, in our country. And I really want to be a part of the positive change. So I'm looking forward to the future, but it's definitely a little bit, for me at least, overwhelming sometimes sitting in it right now. It's like that being in a weird suspension phase, if that makes sense. And I always refer to my military mind as, I know what's coming next, but it's difficult for us because we don't know what's coming next. I mean, we've had killer hornets, we've had animals running the streets, we've had protests. I mean, it just keeps coming. And sometimes I look at the headlines, I'm like, is it serious? Like, it's very interesting that way. So for me, I've learned a lot, and I really appreciate what Sergeant King mentioned as far as similar to the changes that are going on in our community within our Air Force, as we, return to the new operations, we have to keep innovation on the forefront, right? Like, we can't go down that slippery slope like, oh, good news, we don't do coffee with chiefs anymore because we just did that during COVID. We have to adapt and say, wow, well, what did that bring? How, what do we benefit from these types of events, and how can we continue it? So I think that making sure that we take the good, is very important. And as, at least within our organization as leaders, we have to be very vocal about that, right? So when we're sitting in these meetings, be it virtually, but especially as NCOs, senior NCOs, but when we have a seat at the table, just don't take up space, right? So, really advocate for what makes sense, and open up our ears. So that's what I've learned. Anyone else?
Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest things I love about being in the military is that it's routine and it's structured. And once you learn your job, you come to work, you do your job, you strive to do better, and then you move on, rinse and repeat. But within the last 6 months, I would say, one of the biggest things and challenges that I've had to adopt was being a lot more flexible, because we often say, trust the process. Trust the process is be patient and just trust the process. But we've also learned that processes change, especially when the world changes. I mean, EPRs have changed. PCSs have changed right now. Working has changed. And it's taught me not only to teach myself how to be more flexible and how to still complete the mission when everything around you is changing, but also how to reinforce that with buy-in with my airmen. I mean, we say trust the process, but sometimes because processes have to change, we have to find new ways other than just saying, well, this is what the AFI says, or this is what the process is. If it doesn't work, I don't know what to tell you. Instead, I've learned, instead of just receiving the answer no, find another way. Something I've seen a lot is that once there's a brick wall, a lot of people just stop trying to move forward with it. Just because the answer is no right now doesn't mean there isn't another way to get around it or another solution. So it's actually taught me that when that no comes, find another way, get around it to get to the goal that you want to go to, whether that's PCSing, whether that's development, whether that's school or personal development, professional, anything. I've really had to dig deep and find alternate ways to get to the goals that I need.
Thank you, Sergeant Griffin. Would anyone else like to share?
Well, I just wanted to say I appreciate the opportunity to conversation with you folks. Ask the questions, ask the hard questions. I'm out there for anybody, anytime. My email's out there. You can email me, you can call me. I'm here to help facilitate you so that you can be the best you want to be in the United States Air Force, regardless of AFSC, regardless of where you want to go in your life. I think the chiefs are here to help you achieve the things that you want to achieve. So I just thank you for your time this morning, and thank you for your questions. And again, if you need anything, I'm here for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, I definitely echo with Chief HARTZ. I just, want to say, hey, Sergeant Witter, Sergeant King, really appreciate the time, spent with you and everyone this morning and everything. This is greatly appreciated, and it definitely greatly enrich me today. And I hope, that the responses that, we gave be able to help enrich you, you all going forward. And like I said, just like I said, like Chief Hartz stated, I'm a big advocate, not just within our Manpower career field, but for all airmen and everything, because I firmly believe that, obviously, as us chiefs, until we start to begin to transition to retirement, you guys are the future, even though you're in the present, but you guys are the future. And whatever we can do to be able to impart, whatever wisdom and knowledge and mentorship that we can be able to give you to be honestly better than me, then that's what I want you. That's what I want you to be able to have. And like I said, whatever I can do. Like I said, my name's in the global, edwin.r.rice.mil@mail.mil. You could, I'm the only Edwin Rice, I believe, in the global. Jeff, please feel free to shoot me emails, shoot me a message. I definitely will make time to get back with you and everything, and provide you pretty much whatever you feel that you need to be successful. So again, I love dialogues like this. I love events like this, and like I said, please continue to keep inviting me. And if I got time, definitely I will definitely continue to show up, because again, it's not about me, really. It's about you all, more specifically, and then also for us to be able to take this time to be able to learn from each other, grow from each other, and especially in these challenging times, because that's what it's going to take. It's for us to be able to get through and be able to learn from each other together, and that's no respective of rank. There's nothing to say that I cannot learn, from a one striker or a two striker. There's nothing that says I can't do. I can't. I can. I can learn from. We can learn from each other. And like I said, and these venues are really great avenues to do that. So really, kudos to both you, Sergeant Ware and Sergeant King. Really, keep them coming and everything. And like I said, we definitely look forward to, to answering, any other questions, even outside of this forum, and definitely look forward to being back if hosted again. Thank you.
So we're losing people as we go. Everyone's returning back to their next scheduled event. So thank you, everyone, for making the time. I look forward to this every opportunity that we have to do this. I look forward to the discussions and hearing the different perspectives. Sometimes, even though the same questions come up, there's always a different perspective, right? And so even though it may feel repetitive, it's really just an opportunity to learn from each other, because no matter what type of education or training that the Air Force comes up with, or we attend as civilians, learning from each other is how we really move forward, and I think sticks with most of us, right? So I remember more of these conversations I do of any books that I read or articles that I am responsible for. So thank you so much. And next Tuesday and Wednesday we are scheduled as well. And Sergeant King, over to you.
Nothing really further to add. Thank you, Chief Rice, for your perspective and for being here. And thank you, Chief Hartz. I know you navigating through different states and stuff, but I appreciate you for being here and making the time today. Thank you for people who watch this later. So thank you for those who watched. Thanks to those who attended. Sergeant Griffin, thank you as always for your input and for being here. And with that, y'all have a great, great Air Force Day and a great rest of the week. See y'all next week, hopefully.
Hey, thank you.
No problem.